Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hey, welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense and our hemp news segment during the pandemic. We'll have some more videos after the hemp news segment from our archives, but our first story tonight is about cannabis initiatives across the country and initiatives here in Oregon itself. Proponents of various statewide initiative efforts to legalize marijuana access recently turned in signatures to qualify their respective measures for the November 2020 ballot. In Arizona, proponents of a statewide initiative to legalize the sale of marijuana to adults filed over 420,000 signatures from registered voters with Arizona's Secretary of State's office. That total is nearly twice the number of signatures necessary to qualify it for the November 2020 ballot. The measure, known as the Smart and Safe Arizona Act, was filed last year by a coalition of advocacy groups. According to polling data collected in early June, an estimated 2/3 of Arizona voters said that they will definitely or probably vote yes on the measure as it appears on November's ballot. The Arizona Act permits those 21 or older to possess up to 1 ounce of cannabis and directs revenue from retail cannabis sales to fund various public education and safety programs. Adults would also be able to cultivate up to 6 plants for non-commercial purposes in a private residence. Those with marijuana convictions would be permitted to petition the courts to have their records expunged. In another state, in Montana, coalition members affiliated with New Approach Montana recently filed 130,000 signatures to qualify a pair of complementary ballot initiatives to regulate the commercial adult use cannabis market. Montana rules require the state to validate 25,000 signatures to qualify the first measure for the November ballot, and another 51,000 signatures to validate the second. In Nebraska, members for the coalition Nebraskans for Medical Marijuana turned in over 182,000 signatures from registered voters to qualify a medical cannabis legalization measure for the 2020 ballot. To qualify in Nebraska, state officials must validate 121,000 signatures. The proposed initiative amends the Nebraska Constitution to provide the right to use, possess, access, and safely produce cannabis and cannabis products and materials for serious medical conditions, as recommended by a physician or nurse practitioner. Nebraska is one of the only states in the nation that doesn't permit regulated access to either whole plant cannabis or CBD. Adult use ballot initiatives have already qualified for the ballot in New Jersey and South Dakota. Ballot initiatives to legalize medical access will appear on the November ballot in Mississippi and South Dakota. Here in Oregon, Oregon voters will be asked this November to decriminalize drug possession, make therapeutic use of magic mushrooms legal, and create taxes on nicotine vaping products. These, along with campaign contribution limits, are the 4 measures that made it to Oregon's general election ballot in November. Initiative Petition 44 calls for decriminalization of all drug use. That means possession of personal use amounts of heroin, methamphetamine, or just about any other illegal drug would no longer be a misdemeanor crime. People committing misdemeanors can wind up with hefty fines and jail time. If this measure passed, people caught with drugs would instead be cited with a violation. They would then have a choice between paying a fine of up to $100 or obtaining help from an addiction recovery center. The measure wouldn't apply to people possessing larger quantities of drugs intended for sale. It would also create a drug treatment fund paid for in part from marijuana taxes and in part from savings supporters believe would come from law enforcement expenses. The money would be used for grants to fund 24/7 addiction treatment centers. A second drug measure will be on the November ballot is Initiative Petition 34 currently, which would make the manufacture, delivery, and administration of psilocybin mushrooms legal. Psilocybin is the chemical in magic mushrooms that creates psychedelic effects, but some research suggests it may be useful as a treatment for severe depression. The measure would legalize the drug's use in a controlled therapeutic setting administered by a licensed professional. Our next story moves to the far north. Up in Canada, the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police has issued a call for lawmakers to federally decriminalize the low-level possession of all drugs. The Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police calls on federal lawmakers to decriminalize possession of all drugs for personal use. The CCAC President, Chief Constable Adam Palmer, told the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corp, that current drug possession laws have, quote, proven to be ineffective and do not save lives, end quote. Canadian Minister of Health Patty Hajdu and Justice Minister David Lametti said in response that the Canadian federal government, quote, remains committed to advancing evidence-based responses to help reverse the trend of opioid overdose deaths and other substance-related harms in Canada, end quote. Interesting to see where that goes. Here in the United States, a Democratic U.S. Senator says that if his party reclaims the Senate and the White House in November, lawmakers will move very quickly to legalize marijuana, regardless of where Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden stands on the issue. Massachusetts' Senator Ed Markey was asked about a variety of cannabis-related issues during an interview on Saturday, and he said Democrats are positioned to advance marijuana reform as soon as they have a majority in both chambers of Congress. While Biden remains opposed to adult-use cannabis legalization, the senator said supporters will have the votes to pass it in any case. The senator said, quote, we'll move very quickly in January to change these laws, end quote. Host Mike Crawford pressed the senator on Biden's position on legalization, noting that advocates might not like Trump, but they're also turned off by the former vice president due to his insistence that additional research on cannabis is needed before he supports broad reforms. Biden currently backs medical marijuana legalization, federal rescheduling, expungement of criminal records, and allowing states to set their own policies. Massachusetts Senator Markey responded, quote, we'll have the majority of the votes in the United States Senate, and I know the majority leader has moved in that direction. He'll be the majority leader in January. I think we'll have the votes to move it, and the science has moved it there. I think what's going to happen on so many issues is that Congress is a stimulus response institution, and there's a lot happening out there on climate change and on cannabis, and after the election, we'll move these policies forward in our own New Deal, end quote. Some advocates were hopeful that a criminal justice reform task force organized by former Vice President Biden and Senator Bernie Sanders would recommend that the presumptive nominee adopt a pro-legalization stance, but that did not ultimately come to fruition, with the panel recommending a series of modest reforms last week that fall short of ending federal cannabis prohibition. But Massachusetts Senator Markey, who recently debated his primary election challenger, formerly anti-legalization Representative Joe Kennedy, on cannabis issues, is confident that should Democrats take back the Senate, the lawmakers will pass their own version of the Green New Deal, cannabis reform, and universal health care. So time will tell. Also in the interview, the senator discussed the importance of cannabis industry workers being able to unionize and voice support for a proposal from Shalil Title of Massachusetts' Cannabis Control Commission to establish a loan program for economically disadvantaged entrepreneurs using tax revenue for marijuana sales. Asked about providing expungements for prior cannabis offenses, Markey said he's in favor of that policy and that we criminalize these low-level drug issues for too long. Senator Cory Booker and I are up here and endorsing that this week, end quote. Our next story is a medical one. Neither the current nor the cumulative lifetime use of cannabis is associated with heart abnormalities at middle age, according to clinical data published in the journal Addiction. An international team of researchers from Switzerland and the United States assessed the relationship between cumulative marijuana use and the prevalence of electrocardiogram or ECG abnormalities in a group of 185 middle-aged subjects. The researchers controlled for several potential co-founders, including the subject's use of tobacco and alcohol, as well as blood pressure and cholesterol levels. The investigators reported, quote, "We found no evidence that current or lifetime cumulative use of marijuana was associated with a higher prevalence or incidence of major or minor ECG abnormalities in this cohort, although major ECG abnormalities seem to be less frequent in current marijuana users. Whether participants use marijuana daily in the last 30 days or intermittently over their lifetime, marijuana use was not associated with an increase in prevalent or incident-specific ECG abnormalities by middle age," end quote. The authors concluded, quote, "Our finding that occasional marijuana was not associated with ECG abnormalities adds to the growing evidence that this level of marijuana use and cardiovascular disease events and markers of subclinical atherosclerosis are not associated," end quote. Subjects in the study are participating in an ongoing longitudinal trial known as the Coronary Artery Risk Development in Young Adults Study. Data derived from this cohort had previously reported that the cumulative use of marijuana is not independently associated with an increased risk of either atherosclerosis, or the hardening of the arteries, or other adverse cardiovascular events by middle age. The abstract of this study, Association Between Marijuana Use and Electrocardiographic Abnormalities by Middle Age, appears online. Next story is out of Richmond, Virginia. Legislation passed this spring decriminalizing marijuana from a misdemeanor to an infraction in Virginia, and sealing the records of past convictions took effect on Wednesday, July 1st. It'll be a simple fine now. In 2018, police made nearly 30,000 marijuana-related arrests in Virginia. The new law also explicitly seals the criminal records of past marijuana offenders from employers and school administrators, and defines substances previously considered hashish as marijuana. 27 states and the District of Columbia have either legalized or decriminalized the adult possession and use of cannabis. Our next story tonight is out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Cannabis inhalation is associated with reduced short-term reductions in depressive feelings, according to data published in the Yale Journal of Biology and Medicine. Investigators affiliated with the University of New Mexico assessed the effects of herbal cannabis inhalation on depressive feelings in 1,819 subjects over a 1-month period. The study's participants self-administered cannabis at home and reported symptom changes in real time on a mobile software application. The researchers reported that, quote, "Almost all patients in our sample, 96%, experienced symptom relief from using cannabis to treat depression," end quote. Effects were generally limited in duration to 2 hours or less. Cannabis varieties that were dominant in THC, not CBD, were most likely to be correlated with decreases in the intensity of depressive symptoms. The researchers reported, quote, "minimal evidence of serious side effects," end quote. The authors concluded, quote, "Our results indicate that THC in particular is positively correlated with an immediate reduction in the intensity of depressive feelings. Future research on cannabis and depression is needed, directly comparing the short and long-term treatment effectiveness and side effect severity of cannabis use with conventional antidepressant treatment, in conjunction with conventional treatment approaches, and in the presence of clinically discouraged behaviors such as alcohol consumption," end quote. This study, the effectiveness of cannabis flower for immediate relief from symptoms of depression, appears in the Yale Journal of Biology and Medicine. Now, our last story tonight is out of Toronto, Canada. 1 in 5 Canadian patients battling musculoskeletal disorders are using cannabis to ease their pain, according to survey data compiled by researchers at the University of Toronto and presented at a meeting of the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons. The researchers surveyed 600 patients visiting a Toronto orthopedic clinic. 20% of respondents reported either past or current use of cannabis products to assist in managing their pain conditions. Cannabis is legal for both patients and adults all across Canada. 90% of those currently using cannabis for pain management said that it provided either moderate or significant relief, and 40% of the subjects reported having decreased their consumption of other analgesic medications following their initiation of cannabis therapy. Pain patients most frequently reported consuming products high in CBD rather than THC. A 2019 study assessing patients' motives for using medical cannabis determined that over 6 in 10 users do so to treat symptoms of pain. Clinical trial data indicates that cannabinoids possess synergistic activity with opioids, which, quote, may allow for opioid treatment at lower doses with fewer patient side effects, end quote. Among pain patients enrolled in medical cannabis access programs in the United States, most subjects report eventually decreasing or even eliminating their use of opiates. And certainly I've seen that in our clinical activity. In fact, if you are a loved one or looking for help finding a doctor who can help you with medical marijuana, we have a nationwide physician referral service. You can contact us at 503-235-4606. That's 503-235-4606. If you have any other questions concerning cannabis or medical marijuana, you can call us at that same number, 503-235-4606. We have some more video through the top of the hour. I want to thank you for watching. And remember, restore hemp.
Hasta la victoria siempre, hasta la victoria siempre, hasta la victoria siempre.
What time is it? What time is it? Is the microphone on, Mark? What time is it? Right on. We know that. You know we love you, man. We know we take care of our crowd, man. Okay? Give me an H. Give me an E. Give me an L. Give me a P. What's that smell? What's that smell? What's that smell? What's that smell? Awesome.
Seattle Hemp Fest core group high in protein, high in fiber, low in plutonium, and maximum dosage of freedom.
We sleep in aquamarine meadows near grassland ghettos, praying we live through the next government bombardment, while the turmoil is written with blood across our ancestral plays.
First, you guys, in 10 years. It's the first time that we've been so big, so powerful, so intimidating that we got evicted from our meeting space.
So basically, we've got a lot of our big picture for the fest worked out. I think this is our first meeting where we've actually had the permit. Is that right? Where everything's nailed? Last meeting. Okay.
Hi, I'm Yvonne. I'm the hospitality coordinator, and my first hemp fest was in '92 when they had this.
My name's Tony. I'm her right arm. I work in hospitality, and I started.
My name's Gary, and this is my first year. I'm the founder of Hemp Fest, I guess.
My name is Katie Morse. I'm the staff director, and I've been doing hard labor for 5 years.
The sun illuminates our grounds where we build underground railroads and say odes to our familia. And they say Plan Colombia does not affect the lives of the inocentes, descendientes, peasants, children, toda la gente, our gente, your people, for a drug war that is not equal, for a drug war that is not equal.
I definitely need more peer security people. I need to recruit more than anything. I need overnight people. We need 2 people per stage. I want 3 or 4 people per stage.
And we're going to keep people on the recycling thing.
The big issue will be cleaning up after the first day so that the second day is presentable.
We're going to have a crew who more or less goes north to south and vice versa, making sure that everything's in check.
We need everybody's help.
Agua.
We need lots and lots of water for our crew. Anyone have access to those containers? Even if you just have 5 gallons of water goes so far. We're going to need 250 gallons of water, more than that, per day for our staff. So, volunteer.
Our endless struggle, with our lives they juggle, capitalizing on our labors, working us like thirsty camellos every day.
It's for the HIP Coalition, it's for all of us, it's for, hopefully it will help support and get out our ideas. And so it is all of our collective ideas together that will make it happen. There is no particular leader, so to speak, it's our project. I want everybody to feel that way about it as much as possible, because that's what it should be.
While our sons and daughters get slaughtered, their lives desecrated, filled with rocas thrown into contaminated waters, while our visions become fumigated, but you won't see that on television. But you won't see that on television.
This shit is tight, yo.
Yo, what's up? Why you keep forgetting that line? Man, we're performers and shit. He keeps forgetting that line. Hey, can you do it over?
We should be right back against this thing and not so far out there.
Yeah, right there between the 2 paths.
Can't see what?
The gap. This is all spectator. Exactly, it's the whole thing.
I was saying right up here in this flat area in the first place, spacing right down.
I feel like there might be more of a room for people to actually dance.
Yeah, well, you're over there like 70 feet, dude. Can't get these people on board with what I'm trying to think here. You know what I mean? He's going for something that Mick Jagger would need, Now I'll back out. Besides, staging isn't my department anyway.
It's a lot quieter, so you can hear the brain drum right here. I mean,
Does
loud as a bell. And they're almost guaranteed on a Sunday to be unloading. You know, that's usually where they're at.
Right.
But if we're down there, I mean, that gives us, what, another 400 feet away from
So
the grain elevator.
Putting the stage up 6 or 8 feet or something, you got to get it up a ways to.
Yeah, but once you do that, that whole back side of the hill you can't see from here would become an audience area.
Right.
They'd be able to see all the performers.
Outrageous Talk Radio, 100.7 The Buzz. Outrageous Talk Radio, 100.7 The Buzz. It's the BJ Shea Experience. Greetings, fellow H-holes. I am Tip BJ. We're talking with Vivian McPeak, Dominic Holden. These guys are from Hemp Fest, which is happening this weekend. Myrtle Edwards Park, Pier 70 downtown. It's a lot of great stuff. Of course, the big thing is they want to get marijuana decriminalized. And what are some of the cool things you got going on? I hear you have the headliner. The headliner of anybody that would think about marijuana, you've got him there.
Who's your man? It's you guy.
The headliner, man, Tommy.
Tommy Chong?
Yeah.
You know, we heard that he was driving up here from California. He's in Texas right now, from what I understand.
Oh,
you know,
I wouldn't be surprised.
He's taking the shortcut. I don't know if he's going to be able to make it because his dealer got busted.
There you go.
I mean, you never know what's going to happen with these kind of guys, you know.
It's not there.
Oh yeah, we got people. We have some some surprises too that we're going to pull out. We have some special guests that I can't even announce because if I did, I'd have to kill you guys.
Really?
And I love you guys so much.
Can you give us hints, or you're not allowed to really?
All I can say, you know, is that hemp fiber is very woody.
Folks are getting in and they need passes, and so do our staff. It's just that early part where the infrastructure of the event's getting kind of laid out and not everything is really fully gelled together and cohesive quite yet. But, you know, we got a great crew, a lot of good folks. We're gonna kick ass. John, is that being removed or what's up? That banner doesn't go there.
I'm about ready to lift this. Once it's in the air, no banners happen.
The actual banner is about 4 times that size.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Okay, I'm on it. Okay. That's a wild thing. This is a weekly haul. Gone completely crazy over Hemp Fest and talking about pot. I thought actually one of the most interesting things in there, which is kind of risky, since this is normally a more, I don't want to say conservative, but certainly not a wild and crazy paper.
I'm Keith Stropp. I'm the executive director of Normal. And this is Dan Dietz.
I'm from Columbia, Missouri, and been on Normal Sport actually longer than anybody else at this point.
So you're looking forward to some hobnobbing tonight?
Oh yeah,
yes,
that's right. The networking, I think, is the newer version of that verb. But it's always fun when there's a major event like this and it gets close and you start getting phone calls from a lot of your friends and colleagues around the country saying, "Are you going to go? I thought I might go." You know, so I could tell a lot of folks were thinking about it. And then when I saw their lineup, it looked like everybody that I know was going to be here.
It's really a model, I hope, for other people throughout the country. I was just thinking, can we set this up on the Mississippi riverfront at the Arch in St. Louis? You know, something like this might just work out there.
It was not that long ago that it was a 2-foot stage at Volunteer Park.
Was that something?
Go up there.
Remember the one that Gasworks were pushing the crowd?
Dude, I remember standing there like, ah! I saw like
TV and I saw up in the shorts, he's all like, moving around like that. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna see this if I see one band at all.
Marijuana, THC.
So Dandelion Soup, man, the mosh pit. L7 your bid, man. Oh my God.
Santeria, Delta 9, smoke the ganja all the time. We got to free more weed, take back the plant. We got to take the lead.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
We love the herb.
Give it to me. We love the herb. Yeah, I take a little seed, I put it in the ground, and it will come back up to me. The Mother Earth is fed by the sun. She gives it back tenfold to one. The Mother Earth, she gives us all we need. The food that we eat and the air that we breathe. Back to the roots, back to the earth. We gotta tell them how it is. We love the herb. Who's worse, DuPont or Hearst? They made laws to outlaw the herb. They told us that this plant was wrong, and then they poisoned us with their bleach white bomb. Outlaw a plant? How does that work? We are not the owners of this world. This plant is a gift from Almighty God, and if you haven't heard, we love the herb!
We arrested in this country 704,000 Americans last year on marijuana charges. 43% of all drug arrests that occur in this country now are marijuana arrests. So obviously, we're wasting a shitload of money that we should be using to focus on serious and violent crime. Marijuana prohibition invites government into areas of our private lives that are simply inappropriate. We don't want the government knowing what books we read, what music we listen to, the subject of our telephone conversation, or what we do in the privacy of our bedrooms, for that matter.
One more time, you got to tell them how it's done. One more time, you got to tell them how it's done. One more time, you got to tell them how it's done. One more time, you got to tell them how it's done. You take a seat.
Woo, a little crispy. It's been a long weekend. It's been a long weekend. Listen to that. It's already been a long weekend for our staff. Can you believe that? John Davis and his crew built this amazing stage. In fact, we have 6 stages for your convenience and pleasure. So let's show our love to John Davis. Can you believe this stage? I've been to a lot of cannabis-related events, and I'll tell you, I've never seen a crowd as great. I've never seen a stage as auspicious. And certainly, I feel very proud of the people and the bands, the performers, and the ASL interpreters, and the great techs, and our great media crew, and our great sound crew, and our incredible documentary team that is here. It's just unbelievable. I can't tell you what a natural high it is to look out and see all you great folks here. We're running 20 minutes over, so we got to get the Lonnie Rose Band up here soon because I can only make up this stuff so long, even though I'm talking from the heart. But it's probably ready to go.
25th, take back the streets.
I'm knocking off.
So how's it been going today?
It's been going fairly well. It's yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Right.
Yeah, we've this is about my 5th one, and I try to do this every year. Probably be my last one though, because got my time in. Everybody's behaving themselves. Looks like everybody's having a good time.
This has been a more professional event from a musician standpoint than most events I've played at, really. They even came and picked my merchandise up for me from where I rehearsed and brought it. I just thought that was really cool. So I've been very impressed.
It's really interesting watching you tune my guitar.
Just tell us who you are and what brings you to HempFest.
I'm Fat James. I'm a blues player from around the Pugetropolis area. And I'm here at HempFest because I believe in the cause. I suppose I'm a pretty extreme liberal, but I think it's insanity I think it's insane that there are laws against drugs rather than just helping people who have problems with them. It's not the kind of world I understand. And the thought of people going to prison for pot, or even life in prison, this is insanity. And I sort of knew my fellow Americans were a little bit of nuts around the edges, but to me this is just a no-brainer. It's very silly, tragically silly.
Now, a lot of folks probably noticed on our poster this year we have an African-American gentleman. Some people have come up to me and asked me why. The answer is because so many of the people going to prison for nonviolent drug crimes are African-American. In fact, 60% of our state prisoners for non-violent drug offenses are African-Americans. Yet African-Americans make up 12% of the U.S. population. That is blatantly racist, and it's perpetrated by the drug war.
For it to be a felony, I think is ridiculous. And I think it's the worst form of discrimination, because the moment you have any type of felony on your record, you're not going to get any sort of decent job that looks into that type of stuff, which I think
or even better yet, they're not getting good employees because people are afraid to take the drug test. Or if you take a piss test, it might come out clean. But then they got that technology now where they can read if you're using something to like cover up your urine. So or even if you look like a weed smoker, there's a lot of jobs you wouldn't even apply to because you're gonna consistently smoke weed.
Mm-hmm.
Spin.
He's
baby, just call me Kiki. I do that stuff all night. I like to. You can do that shit. You can do that shit. Bad. No, primo. No, primo. Bad. He's a bad man. Was getting real funky. Had you twitching in the corner like a crackhead junkie. Woo! I hit it all night, man. All night long. Like a real man should. And I ain't trying to stop, girl, till you shake real good. Check it out. You know I'll be your man. Got the master plan. You better call Tyrone. Call me, baby. Just call me Kiki. Back to the crib. Back to my crib. We was getting real funky. Had you twitching in the corner. What? Like a crackhead junkie. I hit it all night, man. All night. Like a real man should. And I ain't trying to stop, girl, till you shake real good. Check it out. You know I'll be the man. Call me, baby, just call me Kiki. I do like the I like you. Wu-Tang. Call me, baby. Yeah, you know I'll be the man. Got the master plan. You better call Tyrone. I do that shit all night. I like to keep it tight. You better call Tyrone.
As you can see, the revolution is sexy.
Excellent.
Okay.
Well, we got invited by the Seattle Columbia Committee, and my family lives in Colombia, and if you're not aware, there's a situation going on there. There's a so-called war on drugs, and it's basically a war on the people and civil society there, and so we feel that this is a different way of doing our activism through art and through creative, using our imagination. So we just did that piece to give a synopsis of what's going on in Latin America in general, specifically in Colombia.
When I'm watching the Super Bowl and I see that they're saying people like me are, in addition to like mowing the lawn and having some nachos, also murdered a family in Colombia, I take offense to that. Who else takes offense to that? I did not murder a family in Colombia, and it is the people that are propagating this that are responsible, and they're going to keep on. They're going to be. I can't even imagine how many families are going to die because of our drug war in Colombia.
My son Todd is currently a prisoner in the federal system in Terminal Island, which is near Long Beach in California. He was arrested in July of 1995 for cultivating marijuana.
They pounded the gavel and they rang on the bell. 2 times life in a federal cell. Citations.
Here's a good one. I listen to right-wing radio, talk shows. They're fascinating. They can be really irritating, but they're fascinating. And I heard Rush Limbaugh once, several years ago. Some guy called in and he was advocating legalizing drugs. And Limbaugh cut him off and said, under no circumstances, why I personally, he said, know 2 basketball players whose careers were almost ruined because of cocaine. And I thought, I'll bet you anything that those 2 basketball players got caught. Okay? Which basically proves the caller's point. Because if it hadn't been illegal, their careers wouldn't have almost been ruined, right, Rush? Yeah. So if I'm going to smoke pot, does that bother anybody? It's illegal. So what? In Germany, it was illegal to save the Jews. I mean, come on, it's silly.
All of our offspring could just absolutely go into non-existence if homosexuality keeps blossoming, you see. That's why we should all be thankful for AIDS. I started smoking pot, and now once I started sucking on those joints, what's the next step?
Straight there. I mean, have they pretty much been hostile, or have they been open to your opinions?
For the most part, they've been very negative.
I know I look good to you.
What did he say?
I know I look good.
I know I look good to you.
We're used to it. We do this quite a bit. In our own cities where we're from. Oh yeah! Oh my God!
Yeah.
You are such a stud!
I know.
I'm gonna come. Look at you.
I used to get upset at guys like
A lot of people might think of it as very turn of the century sort of thing.
God lives not in the noise of preachers and Bible thumpers' tongues. There is no way to God through verbal noise of any kind.
God's meeting place with you is in your heart.
It's been that way down through the ages. When you try to control your population for their own good or for your good or whatever, you take away the things that make them, you limit and control the things that give them freedom and give them happiness. You control sex, you control drugs, you control death. You control death by telling them if they die, they'll go to hell. It's just another way of controlling the people that has existed ever since civilization got stinky.
I was a prisoner of the drug war for growing my own medicine. I was given 93 years in prison for a 25 square foot garden, which had basically 45 plants in it. Due to the outrage of the public, I think that it had a lot to do with my sentence being reduced and then eventually me being released from prison. Organizations like NORA's, November Coalition, NORMAL, Marijuana Policy Project, people like Vivian and Dominique, who stands up for the people's rights and puts on events like the Hemp Fest and invites excellent speakers like Chris Conrad, Mickey Norris, which are some of the best drug reformers ever. This is how we're going to change the laws in America, and people aren't going to go to prison no more.
Finally, I would tell you the most important reason why we need to end marijuana prohibition is because we are needlessly destroying the lives and careers of literally hundreds of thousands of genuinely good citizens every year in this country for no good cause. It's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. Now,
I'm not for smoking it. Industrial use, I don't see there any harm, and there's a lot of good uses for it. People fight it because of the, from the blackballing of it through William Randall Person's paper industry. I guess that's where it first started, but I don't mind the industrial use. I mean, it makes rope, fine clothing, fine paper, whatever.
Anything you can make out of hydrocarbon, you can make out of a carbohydrate. There's no reason to be burning fossil fuels when we don't have to.
If you can grow hemp properly, it is a material that contributes to sustainable agriculture because the tonnage of carbon removed from the air in the form of carbon dioxide is high relative to the amount of carbon removed from the air by other plants, like trees.
This is a unmodified 1983 Mercedes-Benz turbo diesel, and the only thing that we've done differently is put lots of wonderful stickers on the car and put hemp biodiesel fuel in the tank. That's it. No modifications.
Also, Mercedes-Benz right now has a Model 420 M Series, believe it or not, that's got hemp composite plastic dashboards and door paneling. And they're discovering that it biodegrades when it breaks upon impact. It doesn't break sharply, so it's less likely to injure a person.
And we've we've been on the road for 6 weeks now. Got 6,000 miles on the car. That's totally on hemp. And we've got another 6 weeks to go roughly before we end our tour in DC.
There's a lot of problems that have to be solved, and we can solve a number of it. Its fiber strength is up on the order of 5,000 psi. So you get a fiber strength that's equivalent to some of the toughest, strongest woods. When you process hemp fiber using a hydrogen peroxide process, you can control the pollution more effectively than using chlorine processing, which is used for paper. The hemp that comes out of this process can be made into oriented strand board. Oriented strand board is the largest growing sector of the materials industry for construction. Oriented strand board can be made with hemp fiber having a modulus of 6,000 psi, about twice the strength of ordinary particle board. This makes hemp fiber bonded with its own natural binders, a suitable material for underlayment, sheathing, and roofing substrate in houses and housing construction.
I got Tierra and Rhea over there. They gave me a Diet Pepsi and a swig when I had Cottonmouth, which was much enjoyed. And we're here at HempFest 93, of course. And I'll remember those two girls for the rest of my life. And I'm going to show my grandchildren what it was like back when marijuana was not legal. Thank you very much.
You know, we have been thinking about this as simply a political misunderstanding on the part of the government, or maybe they didn't understand hemp wasn't the same as marijuana, or maybe they didn't understand that medical marijuana is so important, and we keep educating them on those terms.
Government in and of itself, it's such hypocrisy, because you look at, on one hand, it says that they tell you just say no, drugs are bad, but yet on the other hand, they pay for these like psychological drugs. They say, oh, you take this pill, it'll make you feel better.
Nicotine, caffeine, alcohol, Valium, Vicodin, OxyContin, morphine, sugar. Hell, TV itself is a drug. It's not a war on drugs, it's a war on us.
Okay.
What we have to do is upgrade our standard of voting. We can send people to the moon, and we're sending satellites into outer space. I believe that our system of voting in this country is very antiquated, very old. It needs to be renewed and revised and updated. I think that the voting should be more important than Christmas.
Okay.
I think that we should spend a lot of money on educating the people. Look at it this way. The government is in favor of the United States public to vote. I feel that it's our duty to show them, or to find a way to help the government find ways to help people vote. And I think with television, the telephone, computer optics, and and satellite dishes and all this technology that we've got, we should be able to sit home and vote on all these important issues. And I'm sure the government wants everybody to vote. It's our constitutional right, and they stand behind it. I think that they should get behind us and help us to get out there and make voting a very important issue. It is important, even if you're not in favor of, say, the California Marijuana Initiative or the Hemp Initiative, that's fine. We would love for you to come out and speak your opinion. We want you out there voting. We want you to take an active part in this country. If you do, then I think this will solve the problem.
I want to thank you guys for watching. We're going to go out on another great song by Mr. John Coronet. We'll be back next week and help us restore hemp.
Yeah, restore hemp.
Another chapter as we turn the page. We exist within a Ukraine. I know that freedom's heard around the globe. Just where our future lies will nobody know. Oh, let's make the best of it now. 'Cause you never know when the sky will fall. Maybe the moon will reach the earth one day. We're not the same race that we used to be. Can't you see? Now the next time that you fall in